3 minutes past 8 this morning, and it's time for us to get to Limerick's Mount Rushmore. Jack Anderson is going to sit in judgment on Neil Tracey. The rules are fairly simple. It took us a couple of weeks to establish these, but somebody comes along from our team and puts up 4 people on Mount Rushmore, and our special guest gets to change at least one of them. Only one of them, I'm being reliably informed. Neil Tracey, good morning to you.
All right, lads. How's it going?
Good. Jack Anderson, is it late evening where you are? Is it 8 o'clock in the evening?
Late evening, 5:30. Yeah.
5:30. Okay, so not too bad. And how is life down under at the moment?
We're the very same as you. We're in lockdown as well. Australia's doing quite well though, really, overall. So they may relax the restrictions soon enough, and we may see sport in Australia back sooner than elsewhere.
They were kind of the last ones to go. I remember sitting and watching the start of the new AFL season at home and gathering the kids around to kind of say, this might be the last bit of sport we watch for a while. 9 o'clock on a Thursday or Friday morning, it feels like years and years ago at this stage. Are they talking about potential dates for getting contact sport matches back?
Yeah, they are. Well, the NRL, which is rugby league, has already said, end of May, which is way too optimistic, but there's various commercial pressures on them. And the AFL, which is the one you really look at, are talking about July, but they will be behind closed doors. There will be a lot of government regulations surrounding them. They probably put them in kind of quarantine hubs, if you like. But commercially, even though they're very strong, they're on a knife edge. And there's also other issues to do with entertainment on sport and all that as well. But we think maybe end of July. Not so sure about rugby union. Rugby Australia could even go insolvent soon, so that could be an issue. And cricket is in trouble as well. So it's, that there's obviously the public health issues, but there's the commercial issues before we even think about getting back to play.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, obviously the global pandemic is important, but on the totem pole of what's important, we all know that Limerick's Mt Rushmore is way more important. Neil Tracey, this is the most pressure you've ever been under in your entire life. Where are you starting us off, sir?
I think we'll start off with a couple of bankers. When I sat down to, I suppose it was probably this day last week around that, Tommy got in touch to say, will I be doing this on Wednesday? So immediately the names were running through my head, and I found, in my opinion anyway, I filled up the first 3 of my spots fairly easily. And I was thinking, do you know what, this is actually fairly straightforward. Then the last of the spots, I had maybe 2 or 3 people in mind, and we'll get to it later, but I actually ended up going with someone completely different, based off the feedback I was getting on tweets over the last couple of days. But the first one I think we're going to start is a pretty easy one. He was one of the names that was on pretty much everyone's list. There were 2 names that seemed to be on almost everyone's list. So the first one I'm going to go with is former Munster and Ireland captain, 2-time Heineken Cup winner, 3-time Six Nations winner, 3-time Lions tourist, Paul O'Connell from Young Munsters in Limerick.
I don't think anybody can disagree with this one. I haven't seen anybody not have Paul O'Connell on their Mount Rushmore straight off the bat. Jack, this is very straightforward. No quibbles with this, I presume?
No quibbles at all, and a ginger as well. So, yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're on to that. Yeah, good. Yeah.
My concern here, Neil, is that we've given you this responsibility, and obviously everybody knows that you're a rugby man, and we might have 4 Paul O'Connells, or we might just have 4 rugby heads.
I don't want to give the game away too much, but I will tell you this is the only rugby player on my list of 4 anyway.
Okay.
So, that's actually a big enough decision.
It is, yeah. But it was the easiest one I could put on anyway. I just think when Paul O'Connell was at his height of fame and his height of his powers, I would have been mid-late teens. So you're talking when Munster were winning their 2 Heineken Cups in 2006 and 2008, and when he was first made his when he was played the first 2 of his 3 Lions tours in 2005 and 2009. I think that's when rugby in Limerick as well was probably peaking, when Munster were at their best. And I think he was just the player in it that epitomised everything, particularly from a Limerick point of view. He was hard, tough, uncompromising, But yet he was just an absolutely fantastic, skilled player. And I think those people who would know about his background as well know he was not just a phenomenal rugby player, but he was one of those kids growing up that was just gifted at everything. He was a brilliant golfer, a brilliant swimmer as well. And I think when I was putting this list together, what I had in mind for what I envisaged the Mount Rushmore to be. Now, I know other people might look at it differently as well. I didn't necessarily want it just to be, the four greatest Limerick sports people. I wanted it to be the four Limerick sports people who resonated with the city and the county the most. The four people that people think of instantly when they think of sport in Limerick or sport in whatever county as well. And for that reason, he was probably the easiest selection there was. I think particularly in Limerick as well, when Munster rugby took off, you're talking the early 2000s, and it was pretty much the noughties when Munster rugby, the bandwagon itself was as, it was moving on, and it was as full as it was ever going to be. And, I think in large part of it is down to the way Limerick was at the time. I think for a lot of Limerick people in particular, Limerick had a very bad reputation. There was, a lot of crime. There were gang wars going on, and the Munster rugby bandwagon at the time, having so many people on it as well, it gave people in Limerick a chance to really, really be proud of something, where for quite a long time there wasn't a huge amount to be proud of, because they were getting battered left, right, and centre in the press with the trouble that was going on in the city. And anytime Munster were playing, and anytime someone like Paul O'Connell was there at the forefront leading with Ireland or on the lines, it gave Limerick people a chance to puff their chest out and show to everyone, this is what Limerick City is. Forget about all that other crap that's going on. This is what the real Limerick is. This is what Limerick people love. And in particular as well, this is the man who kind of epitomizes all of it. I remember being, I think it was 16 or 17, and myself and a few of my friends, we were out in the gym in UL doing a bit of a session. And this was back in the time when a lot of the Munster players, they didn't have their high performance centre out there. A lot of the players were just coming in and out of the gym as well. And we were standing at one of the racks doing a few squats and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, Paul would kind of turn to the right, and who's standing there? Only Paul O'Connell. And I mean, for 4 or 5 Limerick rugby mad, 16, 17-year-olds, it was like God had just walked up and was doing squats beside you. He walks over at one point, and he kind of points to one of the plates, and he was like, lads, any chance I could use that? And I don't think any of us actually even responded. I was just staring up at him going, yeah. So, no, I just think he was probably the easiest selection on the list. And I think for what he did for Limerick at a time when it really, really needed a boost, I think he was a pretty easy selection to make.
Let's move on to the hurlers, right? Because I'm wondering, did Cian Lynch come in for consideration on this as the embodiment of a long hurling dynasty, where you also get a bit of Kieran Carey in the 90s? If you pick Cian Lynch now, he was hurler of the year, and it's like the very definition and the essence of what it means to be a modern superstar. Introduced to the team very early on, in like as a teenager, as a forward, but eventually developed into one of the best midfielders of his generation. Was he in consideration here at all for you, Jack?
Yeah, I didn't kind of consider current players, which is maybe I'm wrong on that. I mean, with hurling, you have to start with Mick Mackey. You just have to. There's just no debate over that. He's our ring, he's our record, he's our raging bull, he's everything. 3 All-Irelands, 5 National Leagues, multiple club championships with a hand. Mackey is, everything that is the epitome of Limerick hurling. He has to be on it. So, I mean, I'm just going to walk away if Mackey's not on it. So, that's it. After that, in terms of hurling, you probably go with Eamon Cregan, really, because, when kind of Limerick comes out of a bit of a doldrums in the 60s, Cregan is there. He's there in 73. He moves back to centre back and wins it. He's just tremendous in 73. For some reason, the 73 final is often on All-Ireland goals. And just watch Cregan. He's also there in 1980 when we give one to Galway. He's corner forward. He's absolutely superb. And anyone who's played will have seen him coaching. He's coached up in Mary I until recently. Cregan is, I think there's a story that I don't think he was at actually the final against Galway. I think he had to leave. He was watching it at home or something. He had to leave because it meant so much to him. And I think, when it comes to hurling, he probably meant so much to us as well. So Cregan will be strong. And then Ciarán, of course, as well. The point in 96 against Clare when we beat Clare. Can I say that twice? When we beat Clare. And when Ciarán scores the point. Unfortunately, there was no All-Ireland in 96. I don't think it was played, so we'll just move on. But Ciarán is there. Ciarán, 9 county championships. So he's very strong as well. There's 3. And we could name a few more, but those 3 will do. But Mackey, number 1.
Okay, that's fair enough. And I think there's consensus on this as well, Neil, right?
Yeah, Mick Mackey and Paul O'Connell were like first 2 on the team sheet for me, and I would say for Jack as well. And for most people who got in touch with me, Paul O'Connell and Mick Mackey were right top of the list. To go on and look at the other hurlers as well, like you mentioned, Cian Lynch. I was humming and hawing maybe about someone like Cian Lynch. I think his story is really only starting. I know he's kind of been around on the scene for a good 5 years now at this stage, but that was just because he broke through so young. I was a bit wary of including guys that are still playing on the list because I just wanted to give them the chance to go on and fulfill their career. And who knows? I mean, we could be building another Mount Rushmore in Limerick in 20 years' time. We're adding on a couple of names. Hopefully, we're not chiseling off anyone.
That's how it works. There's only room for 4. There's no. Okay,
well, we'll just have to wait until there's a big scandal and chisel off a face or something like that.
So, for the avoidance of doubt and any future administrative errors, because there was one significant one last week where, anyway, we won't rake over old coals, but this has not been a straightforward process in many of the counties. You, Neil, as our representative, you're going to pick 3 and then you're going to pick 4 actually, but Jack has the opportunity to change your last one. So your 3 that are locked in stone, your third one, who are you giving us?
My third one that's locked in stone is Andy Lee. So I would talk about Andy similar enough to the way I spoke about Paul O'Connell, that when he was coming through 2004 Olympic Games and going through and during the noughties, particularly as well when he had a couple of fights in Limerick in the University Arena. Just like Paul O'Connell, there was a sense that this is Limerick being up on the big stage once again and being able to be really, really proud of ourselves. And to see him go on and win a world title, I think everyone in Limerick was just so delighted that he was finally getting a chance to do that. And the fact as well, I think if you're looking for a barometer for someone to have an official welcome at Shannon Airport to bring home a world title, I think that's a nice little box to be able to tick off to confirm your place on
Donald
the list.
Trump had one at Shannon Airport, I'm fairly sure, or was it Knock? I don't know. But so let's just we should be, I don't want to, I'm not saying Andy Lee and Donald Trump, but I'm just saying.
I'm talking strictly sports.
Okay.
But yeah, oh God, you ruined my point there now, Jer. But it was such a pity that fight against Billy Joe Saunders didn't get to go ahead in Thomond Park, because that just would have been such a brilliant occasion for the people of Limerick to be able to see it. And I know for Andy as well about how much it would have meant to him to be able to defend a world title in his home city. But yeah, I think he was a pretty easy choice to make as well for me. He didn't make everyone's list, but I think just about when I was setting out my criteria of who are the people you think of when you think of Limerick, who are the people that resonate with the people of Limerick, I think Andy Lee is up there, and he's making my list.
I think in terms of, to help bolster the argument, I think in terms of the achievement in a sport which is practiced everywhere in the world, like boxing is legitimately a global sport, You can see it in the Olympics, but then you can see it particularly in the professional ranks. And for Andy to have the career that he did, and to reach the high heights that he did, and for him to be continuing now that career, I think there's going to be a really interesting second chapter where his coaching comes to the fore. He has just masterminded the heavyweight champion of the world becoming the heavyweight champion of the world, like, which we didn't even talk about there, but like, you know, there is definitely a second element to this that's going to develop into the future. And I really think anybody who makes it in football, again, because everybody in the world kicks a ball as soon as they can stand. Anybody who makes it in running should also be highly considered. And I noticed that Frank O'Mara hasn't come up in your conversations.
Yeah.
But certainly there was...
Frank O'Mara come up. Yeah, Frank O'Mara is a world champion. We also have Sam Lynch in rowing, a world champion as well. So there's 3 world champions for you. Andy Lee, yeah, obviously a great amateur as well as a professional, and around the middleweight division. So that's, you know, as competitive as you get in world boxing. So yeah, but just to mention that Limerick had 3 world champions, just to mention there, in one breath.
Again, yeah, and no harm ramming the point home. But okay, so they're your first 3, and now we get to the contentious point. Who is your 4th, Neil? So Paul O'Connell's guaranteed, Mick Mackey's guaranteed, Andy Lee is guaranteed. This last one, Jack is going to get the opportunity to change this and swap somebody in or out. So who have you got for us?
I am going to go, after a lot of consideration, my final choice is going to be for soccer. It's going to be former Limerick and Waterford player, but Limerick native Al Finucane. So Al Finucane, he was a Republic of Ireland international and had a staggeringly long career with in the League of Ireland. He is, from what I could find out anyway online, he is the official all-time League of Ireland appearance holder. He's got 600 and, God, I don't have it in front of me, 600 and something appearances in the League of Ireland. Played for 27 seasons, well into his mid-40s. Ended up playing in the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup at the age of 43, which is, from what I could find, it's still a record for the competition. And he wasn't someone that I was seriously considering initially. But as I said, I threw out a tweet on Monday to kind of gauge opinion and stuff. And I was absolutely blown away with the amount of people who were putting Al Finucane on their list. And as I had previously said as well, this is the list I was putting together was the 4 people who I felt were best representing, you know, the opinion out there, who were best, you know, resonating with the people. And for simply that reason, I had to put him into my list.
Okay. You got bullied into it, I'm hearing.
Not so much. I was open-minded. I was open-minded going into it. Initially, I had been considering either Eamon Cregan or Kieran Carey for it. But yeah, my mind just got swayed over the course of the last couple of days.
What about Steve Finnan, lads? Asks Jim Keown, born in Limerick, moved to England when young, a great right back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on Steve Finnan, like, I think the fact that he left Limerick so young, he probably doesn't stick out so much as to the people of Limerick so much. Like, I only got a handful of people actually calling for Steve Finnan, and obviously he has achieved way more than I would say any Limerick player has in the game of football. But I think it's just I think it's the lasting impact he has on the city itself is why I would be choosing someone like Al Finucane above Steve Finnan.
Jack, who have you got for us?
So I went through. It's funny with football, with soccer. Even though, you know, participation-wise, it would be one of the biggest, you know, in the city, particularly in the city. Al Finucane, I would have had him. Steve Finnan's record, obviously, at the elite level is and there's others like Don Givens, etc. You know, in that. So football, it's a strange one, that one, really, for Limerick City. You know, it's a very strange one. Al Finucane is kind of our Beckenbauer, if you like. You know, that's who we would go for. Generally, on the 4th one, I was ready for Neil to have all sorts of rugby ones on. So I had a bit of a short list on that. Hear me out on this. I went to school with him, but John Hayes was the first person to get 100 caps for Ireland. So very popular figure for lots of reasons. Joy Neville, Roisin Upton from hockey, Joy Neville from rugby would be some of the names you take into account. But if I was coming down to the fourth one, and this goes back in history, but there's a Limerick guy who won 3 Olympic gold medals in a row. J.J. Flanagan in the hammer throw won 1900, 1904, 1908, representing the US, but look, take that. But 3 Olympic gold medals. I don't want to put you in any controversy, but there's only one other Irish person who won 3 Olympic gold medals. And that's just stop. And that's an outrageous achievement by Flanagan. It's such an achievement that we actually won another one in 1920, a guy from Palace Green, Paddy Ryan, but we probably don't have time to mention that. Flanagan goes on, he coaches O'Callaghan, who wins 2 more gold medals. J.J. Flanagan is Irish sporting gold.
Well, look, we had the awful situation where Nathan Murphy completely boobed on the very first one of these, where he left off somebody else who'd won a bunch of gold medals, also representing the States from Mayo, and you're like, here, come on. I mean, either this has some credibility or it doesn't. So, Jack, this is your call. This is your spot on the mountain. Is this your final answer?
Final answer is J.J. Flanagan, has to be.
Neil, I don't think you can complain too much, can you?
No, I can't. He was someone that I had been kind of, had down on the long list of names as well. And who can possibly argue with 3 Olympic medals? But the reason I would have, edged for someone like Alpha Nukin or the other people on my list is it was specifically the criteria I was putting down when I was making the list myself. It was, who are the names that are jumping out to the people of Limerick. There are probably a lot of Limerick people who don't know the story of John Flanagan. And look, maybe this is a brilliant place to actually tell that story, to have him up there and people go out and look at it. And, you can have a little plaque there.
Where? That's the question. That's the last question that we need to settle on. And my topographical, if that's even a word, knowledge of the hills of Limerick. Whereabouts is this mountain being chiselled?
It's up in the Galties, Jack, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, the thing about Limerick is, the thing about Limerick is that the city people think our big enemy is Clare, which is just nonsense. The number one sporting rivalry is with Tip. So I want it up on the Galties, so they have to look at it every day. And if we could get JP McManus to sponsor it, we put floodlights and everything on it. So those 4 on the Galty Mountain. There's our motto.
That sounds like a worryingly realistic prospect, actually.
Here, look.
Let me work on that one.
This is a great idea. If we get one actual Mount Rushmore out of this and it's sponsored by JP, we'll be happy. We can retire happily at that point. Lads, that was great. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Neil, I don't think there's going to be too much controversy about this. Jack, that was an excellent choice. A little bit of historical context, and hopefully we mentioned everybody who deserved a mention. I know the runners are going to be disappointed that Frank O'Mara didn't get more of a shout because he was a world champion in a sport that, again, literally everybody on the planet can do. Yeah. So the backlash from the athletes will be long and lasting, but we can take it. That is your Limerick Mount Rushmore. Thanks, lads, and best of luck. We'll talk to you again soon.